For 20,000 years, the galaxy had known only one truth. The Zetherian dominion could not be defeated. Their empire stretched across 47 star systems, a web of conquered worlds bound together by fear and absolute power. The Zetherians themselves were beings of pure energy, clothed in armor that shimmered like captured starlight. They did not age. They did not die. They were, by every definition that mattered to the civilizations they crushed, immortal. History remembered the civilizations that had tried to resist. The Krell Confederacy, with their molecular disruptors and quantum shields, had lasted 3 days. The Velsheri Collective, masters of biological warfare, were erased in 7 hours. The pattern never changed: defiance, battle, extinction. The galaxy learned to kneel. Earth received the Herald's message on a Tuesday. Dr. Rylan Tor was in his lab beneath the lunar research station when the transmission cut through every communications channel in the solar system. The voice that spoke was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It simply was, carrying the weight of millennia. Humans of Earth, we are the Zetherian Dominion, eternal rulers of this galaxy. Your species has been evaluated. You will serve, or you will be removed from existence. You have 1 solar rotation to accept our terms. Resistance is futile. We have heard these words before, from civilizations far greater than yours. They no longer exist. The transmission ended. Ryland's hands trembled as he stared at the now silent comm screen. Around him, his team sat frozen, faces drained of color. In that moment, humanity faced a choice that had destroyed every species before them. Most advocated for surrender. The United Earth Council convened emergency sessions. Military analysts ran simulations. Every projection showed the same result: extinction. The Zetherians possessed technology so advanced it appeared magical. Their fleets could crack planets. Their warriors could phase through matter. Their shields had never been breached. But Rylan Tor remembered his daughter. She had been 6 years old when the colony on Titan was destroyed by a meteor strike that could have been prevented. 6 years old, with her mother's eyes and a laugh that made the darkness feel lighter. The authorities had called it an unavoidable tragedy. Rylan had called it unacceptable. He had learned then that humanity's greatest weakness was also its greatest strength. Humans refused to accept the impossible. "We're not surrendering," Rylan announced to his team 3 hours after the Herald's message. "We're building a weapon." They thought he'd lost his mind. Project Phoenix began in secret, hidden in the asteroid belt where no satellites could see. Rylan gathered the brightest minds humanity had ever produced: quantum physicists, weapons engineers, AI architects, starship designers. He gave them one directive: create something the Zetherians had never faced before. "They've conquered 47 civilizations," Rylan told his team on the first day. "Every single one fought with weapons the Dominion understood: energy shields, plasma cannons, nuclear warheads. We're not going to beat them at their own game. We're going to change the rules." The TSS Valkyrie took shape over 18 months of desperate work. She was not the largest warship ever built. She wasn't meant to be. Instead, she was a marvel of human creativity. A synthesis of technologies that shouldn't work together but did, because humans made them work. Her hull was constructed from metamaterial that could shift between solid and quantum states. Her weapon systems included plasma lattice cannons that could fire through dimensional folds. Her power core harnessed contained quantum singularities, controlled by an AI-human hybrid consciousness. But her true weapon was something no other species possessed: unpredictability. Captain Ilara Vance was chosen to command her. At 42, Ilara had spent 20 years in Earth's deep space fleet, patrolling the outer reaches of the solar system. She had a reputation for tactical brilliance and unshakable calm. When Rylan approached her with Project Phoenix, she asked only one question: "Can we win?" "I don't know," Rylan answered honestly. "But I know we can make them bleed." Ilara smiled. "Then we'll make them remember us." The day the Zetherian fleet arrived, Earth's sky filled with ships that blotted out the sun. 73 dreadnoughts, each one capable of sterilizing a planet. The Herald Vakor materialized above New York, his form radiating with ancient power. "Your time has expired," Vakor announced, his voice echoing across every city on Earth. "You have chosen extinction. We will be merciful. Your deaths will be swift." That's when the Valkyrie emerged from the shadow of Mars. She was a speck against the Dominion fleet, a single ship facing an armada of world killers. The Zitherians barely noticed her at first. Why would they? She was one vessel. They were eternal. Lieutenant Noah Reed sat at the weapons console, his hands steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Captain, we have firing solution on the Herald's flagship." Ilara Vance stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, watching the impossible odds displayed on the tactical screen. Every simulation said they would lose. Every calculation showed certain death. She thought about humanity's history. Every time they'd been told something couldn't be done, and did it anyway. "All hands," Ilara spoke calmly into the ship-wide comm. "Today we show the galaxy what it means to be human. Fire." The Valkyrie's plasma cannons tore through the void, and for the first time in 20,000 years, the immortal god screamed. The plasma lattice round struck the Herald's flagship with the force of a collapsing star. The Zitherian shields, impenetrable barriers that had withstood planetary bombardments, flickered, then cracked, then shattered. On the bridge of the Valkyrie, every display lit up with impossible data. Lieutenant Noah Reed stared at his console, barely breathing. "Direct hit. Their shields are down, Captain. We hurt them." Across the Dominion fleet, silence fell like a sudden winter. For the first time in their eternal existence, the Zitherians felt something they had forgotten: surprise. Harold Vakor materialized on the Valkyrie's view screen. His form no longer radiant with confident power, but crackling with fury. His face, if it could be called a face, twisted with an emotion that might have been rage or might have been fear. "Impossible," Vakor hissed. "Your primitive weapons can't?" Captain Ilara Vance interrupted, her voice cold as the void between stars. "You've been immortal for so long you forgot what evolution looks like. We've had 18 months to study your broadcasts, your energy signatures, your arrogance. You told us resistance was futile. You gave us a countdown. You gave us time." She leaned forward in her command chair. "Biggest mistake you ever made. You are one ship." Vakor's voice thundered through the bridge. "We are 73. We are eternal." Ilara smiled without warmth. "Then you should have brought more." The Zitherian fleet moved as one, converging on the Valkyrie like predators surrounding wounded prey. Energy weapons that could vaporize moons fired in unison. The space around the human warship became a storm of destructive light, but the Valkyrie was already gone. "Quantum displacement successful," called out Ensign Maya Chen from the navigation console. "We're 3,000 kilometers starboard behind their formation." Dr. Rylan Tor, monitoring from the engineering deck, allowed himself a tight smile. The Zitherians fought with overwhelming power and perfect precision. They were masters of warfare, predictable, methodical warfare. Humanity had studied 47 conquered civilizations and learned one critical lesson. The Dominion had never faced an enemy that fought creatively. "Noah, paint them," Ilara commanded. Lieutenant Reed's fingers danced across his console. The Valkyrie's secondary weapons, not plasma cannons but something far more insidious, fired at 6 Zitherian dreadnoughts simultaneously. The rounds didn't explode. They didn't even seem to do damage. They simply attached to the hulls like metallic parasites. "Quantum markers deployed," Noah reported. "They're tagged." "Good." Ilara's eyes gleamed. "Now they're fighting each other." "Initiate protocol Mirage." The quantum markers began broadcasting false sensor signatures, making each tagged Zitherian ship appear to be the Valkyrie to every other Dominion vessel. Confused, operating on automated defense systems that had worked flawlessly for millennia, 3 Zitherian dreadnoughts opened fire on their own fleet. Chaos erupted among the gods. "What is this?" Vakor's voice cracked with something that might have been panic. "What have you done?" "We adapted," Ilara replied simply. "You should try it sometime." The battle that followed would be studied for generations, not because of its scale, but because of its audacity. The Valkyrie didn't fight like the civilizations that came before. She didn't try to match the Dominion's overwhelming firepower. Instead, she moved like a ghost, striking from impossible angles, using the Zitherians' own weapons against them, turning their perfect coordination into deadly confusion. Noah Reed proved why humanity had chosen him despite his youth. His weapons patterns were jazz, improvisational, unpredictable, brilliant. He fired plasma rounds through dimensional folds, making shots appear from directions that shouldn't exist. He used gravity wells to bend enemy fire back at its source. He laughed while doing it, because humans had learned long ago that humor in darkness was its own form of courage. 12 dreadnoughts disabled, Maya reported, her voice steady despite the fact that they were performing miracles, 18 more showing critical damage. But the Zytherians were learning. Harold Vacor's flagship surged forward, its weapon systems adapting in real time. The immortal commander had lived for thousands of years, fought thousands of battles. He began predicting the Valkyrie's movements, cutting off escape routes, forcing her into tighter tactical positions. "Captain," Ryland's voice came through from engineering, tight with worry. "Our quantum core is overheating. We've pushed the displacement drives beyond their design limits. If we jump again, we'll tear ourselves apart," Alara finished. "Understood." She looked at the tactical display. They'd destroyed or disabled 27 Zytherian dreadnoughts. Impossible odds had become merely terrible ones. But 46 godships still remained, and the Valkyrie couldn't run anymore. Lieutenant Reed turned in his chair, his young face suddenly serious. "Captain, I have an idea. It's completely insane." Alara raised an eyebrow. "Those are my favorite kind. Our quantum core is destabilizing, right? What if we don't try to stabilize it? What if we weaponize it?" The bridge fell silent. Dr. Ryland's voice came through, heavy with realization. "You want to turn the Valkyrie into a quantum bomb." "Not a bomb," Noah corrected. "A singularity pulse. We vent the core directly at Vacor's flagship. It'll create a cascading quantum collapse that will chain react through every Zytherian ship within 50,000 kilometers. It'll also tear the Valkyrie apart," Maya said quietly. "Not if we do it in stages," Ryland said, his mind already racing through calculations. "Not if we bleed the energy slowly enough to ride the shockwave out. It's possible. Maybe 10% chance of survival." Alara Vance stood, looking at her crew, these brilliant, brave, impossibly stubborn humans who had chosen to fight gods rather than kneel. "Harold Vacor," she spoke into the comm. "You asked what we've done. We've given the galaxy something it hasn't had in 20,000 years." The Valkyrie's quantum core began to pulse with barely contained power, hope. The quantum core of the TSS Valkyrie screamed. It was a sound that shouldn't exist, the auditory manifestation of reality itself being torn apart at the subatomic level. Throughout the ship, bulkheads groaned. Conduits sparked. The lights flickered between normal illumination and the strange, otherworldly glow of quantum instability. Dr. Ryland Tor worked with hands that refused to shake, rooting power through systems never designed for this kind of stress. Around him, his engineering team moved with desperate precision, each one knowing that a single miscalculation would vaporize them all. "Core breach in 90 seconds, Ryland announced, his voice somehow calm. "Singularity formation at 70%. Captain, we're committed." On the bridge, Captain Alara Vance watched the Zytherian fleet close in like a tightening noose. Harold Vacor's flagship led the formation, its weapons charging for a final, overwhelming strike. Around it, 45 dreadnoughts moved in perfect synchronization, the coordination of beings who had fought together for millennia. "They think we're dying," Lieutenant Noah Reed observed, watching his tactical display. "They're clustering together for the kill." "Good," Alara said quietly. "Let them come closer." Harold Vacor's face filled the view screen, his form now burning with righteous fury. "You have fought well for mortals, but this ends now. You cannot kill eternity. You cannot—" "You keep using that word," Alara interrupted. "Eternity. Immortality. As if time makes you special." She leaned forward, her eyes hard as diamond. "We humans live maybe 100 years if we're lucky. We die from disease, from accidents, from old age. We're fragile, temporary, mortal." The quantum core's whine rose to a fever pitch. "But you know what we learned in our brief existence?" Alara continued. "That it's not how long you live that matters. It's what you do with the time you have. You've lived for 20,000 years and learned nothing but cruelty. We've lived for a few decades and learned to dream. Poetic words won't save you," Vacor snarled. "You die now and your species dies with core breach in 10 seconds. Ryland's voice cut through. 9, 8, all hands brace for quantum discharge," Alara commanded. Then, softer to her crew, "It's been an honor. 7, 6. Noah Reed's fingers hovered over the firing controls. Maya Chen gripped her console. Across the ship, 417 humans held their breath. 5, 4. Harold Vacor's weapons reached full charge. 45 other dreadnoughts did the same. Enough firepower to crack a moon concentrated on one human warship. 3. 2. Alara Vance smiled. Fire everything. 1. The Valkyrie didn't explode. She erupted. The quantum core vented directly forward, a focused beam of collapsing spacetime that struck Harold Vacor's flagship at the speed of causality itself. For a fraction of a second, the Zetherian shields held. Then the quantum cascade began. Reality unraveled. The Herald's flagship didn't just explode, it ceased. Matter converted to energy. Energy folded into impossible geometries. And the resulting shockwave propagated through quantum entanglement to every Zetherian ship within 50,000 kilometers. One by one, the god ships began to tear themselves apart at the molecular level. Vacor's scream echoed across every communications channel in the solar system, the sound of something that believed itself eternal, realizing it could end, then silence. The Valkyrie tumbled through the debris field, her hull scarred and burning, her systems failing but intact, impossibly miraculously intact. Damage report, Alara gasped, pulling herself back into her command chair. Quantum core is dead, Rylan reported, his voice hoarse. Main power at 15%. Life support holding. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, but we're sealing them. Captain, we're alive. Tactical? Alara asked. Noah Reed stared at his console with wide eyes. 38 Zetherian dreadnoughts destroyed. 7 more crippled and retreating. The Herald's flagship is gone, just gone. The remaining ships are breaking formation. Captain, they're running. Across the solar system, the impossible had happened. The immortal gods of the Zetherian Dominion were fleeing from a single human warship. But the battle's end was not the story's end. Within hours, news of the Valkyrie's victory spread through underground networks across the galaxy. Conquered civilizations that had lived in silent terror for millennia suddenly whispered a name. Humanity. The species that had made the immortals bleed. On the Krell homeworld, enslaved for 6,000 years, rebels rose up and overthrew their Zetherian overseers. The occupiers, shaken by news from Earth, fell to a resistance they'd ignored for centuries. In the Velshari system, the biological warfare masters emerged from hiding. They had learned to survive in the shadows. Now they learned to fight again. Across 47 star systems, the impossible became possible because one species had proven that gods could die. 3 months later, Captain Alara Vance stood before the United Earth Council. The Valkyrie was in dry dock being repaired and studied. Her crew had become legends. Dr. Rylan Tor was designing a fleet of sister ships. Lieutenant Noah Reed was training new weapons officers in the art of creative warfare. Captain Vance, the council speaker, said, "You've started something we can't control. The Zetherian Dominion still exists. They still have thousands of ships, entire fleets we never touched. They will come back, and next time they'll be prepared for us." Alara nodded. "I know. They may destroy us." "They might," Alara agreed. "But they'll never make us kneel. And every species watching will know that truth. The Dominion can be beaten. Will that spark more wars? Probably. Will species die fighting for freedom? Yes." She met the speaker's eyes. "But living on your knees isn't living. It's just dying slowly." She turned to leave, then paused. The Zetherians called themselves eternal. They thought 20,000 years made them gods. But they forgot something important. What's that? Alara smiled. Eternity is just time. And time changes everything. The galaxy spent 20,000 years learning to fear them. Now it learns something new. How to fight back. How to hope. How to be free. She walked out into the sunlight where her crew waited. Above Earth, stars glittered in the void. Some of them home to species that had forgotten the taste of freedom. Others to civilizations that would never know chains. The Valkyrie had changed everything. Not through overwhelming power, but through a single, undeniable truth. Immortality means nothing to those who dare to change the impossible. The Zetherian Dominion would return. But they would return to a galaxy that no longer feared them. To species that remembered how to fight. To a future where gods could bleed and mortals could dream. And at the center of it all, humanity, brief, brilliant, unbowed, had become the spark that reignited the stars.